The mountain air was crisp that morning when Lieutenant Sarah Chun received a radio call that would change everything. She was cleaning her rifle at the forward observation post when the crackling voice of Captain Rodriguez broke through the static. 8 enemy snipers had been spotted along the ridge line, picking off supply convoys and pinning down 3 separate patrol units. The situation was critical. Sarah had earned her reputation as one of the finest marksmen in the battalion through 2 years of combat experience. Her fellow soldiers often joked that she could hit a target from distances that seemed impossible, but there was nothing funny about the current situation. The enemy snipers had chosen their positions carefully, using the natural rock formations and dense vegetation of the ridge to create nearly invisible shooting positions. The intelligence report painted a grim picture. The 8 snipers were part of an elite enemy unit that had been terrorizing coalition forces for months. They operated with military precision, moving between carefully prepared positions and communicating through hand signals. Each sniper was equipped with high-powered rifles and had extensive knowledge of the local terrain. Previous attempts to dislodge them using artillery had failed because they would simply retreat into the extensive cave system that honeycombed the mountain. Sarah studied the topographical maps spread across the makeshift table in the command bunker. The ridgeline stretched for nearly 2 miles, offering countless hiding spots and escape routes. Traditional assault tactics would be suicide against such well-positioned enemies. The steep terrain made flanking maneuvers nearly impossible, and any direct approach would expose attacking forces to devastating crossfire from multiple angles. Captain Rodriguez explained the urgency of the situation. 3 supply convoys had already been hit in the past week, resulting in significant casualties and the loss of critical medical supplies. The main supply route to forward operating bases was effectively cut off as long as those snipers remained in position. Morale among the troops was dropping as soldiers felt trapped and vulnerable every time they ventured outside the relative safety of their defensive positions. The weather forecast added another layer of complexity to the mission. A storm system was approaching from the west, promising heavy rain and reduced visibility within the next 48 hours. Once the storm hit, any chance of locating and eliminating the enemy snipers would disappear for at least a week. The enemy would use this time to reinforce their positions and potentially bring in additional personnel. Sarah volunteered for what everyone understood was essentially a suicide mission. The plan was simple in concept, but nearly impossible in execution. She would climb to an elevated position on the opposite side of the valley and attempt to locate and eliminate all 8 snipers before they could reorganize and escape. The distance would be extreme, requiring shots of over 800 meters across windy mountain terrain. Preparation began immediately. Sarah selected her equipment with meticulous care. Her primary weapon was a customized sniper rifle that she had personally modified over months of combat experience. Every component had been tested and retested under field conditions. She packed specialized ammunition designed for long-range precision shooting, along with backup weapons and enough supplies for a 3-day solo mission. The night before the mission, Sarah spent hours studying reconnaissance photos and satellite imagery. She memorized every rock formation, every tree, and every possible hiding spot along the ridgeline. Intelligence officers briefed her on the enemy snipers' known movement patterns and preferred shooting positions. Each enemy position had been given a designation, and Sarah created a detailed plan for engaging each target in sequence. Sleep came in fitful intervals that night. Sarah reviewed the mission parameters repeatedly in her mind, visualizing each shot and planning for multiple contingencies. She understood that once she fired the first round, the remaining 7 snipers would immediately know her approximate location. The element of surprise would be gone, and the mission would become a deadly game of cat and mouse across the mountainous terrain. The pre-dawn darkness provided cover as Sarah began her ascent to the shooting position. She moved carefully through the rocky terrain, using natural features to mask her approach. Every step was calculated to avoid loose rocks or vegetation that might give away her position. The weight of her equipment made the climb challenging, but Sarah had trained extensively for this type of mountain warfare. As she climbed higher, the enemy positions became more visible through her spotting scope. The intelligence reports had been accurate. 8 distinct muzzle flashes had been recorded from different positions along the ridge during previous engagements. Sarah could see the subtle signs of human presence: disturbed vegetation, camouflaged shooting blinds, and the glint of optical equipment. The shooting position Sarah had selected offered excellent visibility across the entire target area, but it also left her exposed to counter-sniper fire once her location was discovered. The position was a narrow ledge, approximately 50 meters below the ridge crest, with minimal cover beyond a few scattered boulders. She would need to work quickly and efficiently to eliminate all targets before enemy reinforcements could arrive. Sarah established her firing position as the first rays of sunlight began to illuminate the valley. She deployed a bipod for her rifle and used her backpack to create a stable shooting platform. Wind conditions were favorable, with only light and variable breezes that wouldn't significantly affect bullet trajectory at the ranges she would be shooting. The first target appeared in her scope as the morning light improved. Enemy Sniper 1 was positioned behind a large boulder approximately 820 meters away. Sarah could see the distinctive outline of a rifle barrel extending from behind natural cover. The target was partially concealed, presenting only a small portion of his upper body as a viable shooting opportunity. Sarah controlled her breathing and began the careful process of range estimation and ballistic calculation. At this distance, factors like air density, temperature, and wind speed would significantly affect bullet trajectory. She made minute adjustments to her scope settings and settled into a comfortable shooting position. The moment arrived when enemy Sniper 1 shifted position slightly, presenting a clear shot opportunity. Sarah squeezed the trigger with practiced precision, feeling the familiar recoil of her rifle. Through her scope, she watched the target drop immediately. The first enemy sniper had been eliminated, but 7 more remained, and they now knew someone was hunting them. The game of survival had begun, with Sarah alone against 7 experienced enemy marksmen who knew the terrain intimately and were fighting for their lives. The echo of Sarah's first shot rolled across the valley like thunder, alerting every remaining enemy sniper to her presence. She immediately shifted position, moving 15 meters to her left behind a cluster of large rocks. This movement saved her life as 3 incoming rounds struck exactly where she had been lying moments before. The enemy response was swift and coordinated. Sarah could see muzzle flashes from multiple positions as the remaining 7 snipers attempted to locate and suppress her firing position. Bullets ricocheted off the rocks around her, sending fragments of stone flying through the air. The enemy had clearly trained for this type of scenario and were executing well-rehearsed counter-sniper tactics. Sarah used her spotting scope to identify the locations of the incoming fire. Enemy Sniper 2 was positioned approximately 900 meters away in what appeared to be a constructed hide made from local vegetation and camouflage netting. The position was cleverly designed to blend seamlessly with the natural surroundings, making it nearly invisible except when a sniper fired. The tactical situation had become far more complex. Sarah was now engaged in simultaneous duels with multiple highly skilled opponents who held the advantage of prepared positions and superior knowledge of the terrain. Every movement she made was potentially visible to enemy observers, while the enemy snipers remained well concealed in their carefully selected hides. Sarah decided to use the enemy's coordination against them. She fired a deliberate miss at enemy Sniper 3's position, designed to draw return fire and reveal exact locations. The tactic worked perfectly. 3 enemy snipers opened fire simultaneously, their muzzle flashes clearly visible in Sarah's scope. She had identified enemy snipers 3, 4, and 5 in position spread across a 200-meter section of the ridge. The return fire forced Sarah to take cover again, but she had gained valuable intelligence. She now knew the precise locations of more than half the remaining enemy snipers and could begin planning a systematic elimination sequence. The key would be to engage targets quickly enough to prevent them from relocating between shots. Enemy Sniper 2 presented the most immediate threat due to his elevated position and clear field of fire across Sarah's general area. She studied his position carefully, noting that he had limited mobility due to the rocky terrain surrounding his hide. If she could eliminate him quickly, it would reduce incoming fire and provide breathing room to engage the other targets. Sarah waited for Enemy Sniper 2 to fire again, using the brief muzzle flash to pinpoint his exact location. When the opportunity came, she was ready. Her second shot traveled 915 meters across the windy valley, striking the target's center mass. Enemy Sniper 2 collapsed behind his position, his rifle falling silent permanently. The elimination of the second sniper triggered an aggressive response from the remaining enemies. They began using suppressive fire tactics, with multiple snipers firing simultaneously to keep Sarah pinned down, while others attempted to reposition for better shots. The volume of incoming fire increased dramatically as the enemy fighters realized they were facing a single, highly skilled opponent. Sarah found herself trapped behind a boulder formation as bullets struck the rocks around her position every few seconds. The enemy had effectively pinned her down, but they had also revealed their locations through sustained fire. She counted muzzle flashes from 6 different positions, confirming that 6 enemy snipers remained active. The tactical situation required immediate action. Sarah couldn't remain pinned down indefinitely, as the enemy would eventually coordinate a flanking movement or call for reinforcements. She needed to break the suppression and regain the initiative in the engagement. Using a small mirror from her survival kit, Sarah was able to observe enemy positions without exposing herself to direct fire. Enemy Sniper 6 had moved to a position only 600 meters away and appeared to be preparing for a closer engagement. His aggressive positioning made him an immediate priority target, but also presented an opportunity for a relatively easy shot. Sarah timed her movement carefully, waiting for a brief lull in the incoming fire. She rolled quickly to a new shooting position and acquired Enemy Sniper 6 in her scope just as he was adjusting his own rifle position. The third shot of the engagement was her easiest, covering only 620 meters to a clearly visible target. Enemy Sniper 6 was eliminated before he could fire a single round from his advanced position. The death of their comrade caused a noticeable change in enemy tactics. The remaining 5 snipers became more cautious, reducing their rate of fire and taking more time between shots. Sarah could sense their growing concern as they realized they were being systematically hunted by an opponent they couldn't see clearly. Enemy Sniper 7 made a critical mistake by firing too many rounds from the same position without relocating. Sarah had been tracking the repeated muzzle flashes and had calculated an exact range of 840 meters to his hide. When he fired his next shot, Sarah was already aligned and ready to respond. Her 4th successful shot eliminated Enemy Sniper 7, leaving only 4 opponents remaining on the ridgeline. The psychological impact on the surviving enemy fighters was becoming apparent. Their fire had become sporadic and poorly coordinated as each sniper focused more on personal survival than team tactics. Sarah used this change in enemy behavior to begin a systematic hunt for the remaining targets. Enemy Sniper 4 had revealed his position during the earlier suppressive fire sequence, and Sarah had marked his location at approximately 1,000 meters range. The distance would be challenging, but the target was stationary and partially exposed. The longest shot of the engagement required careful calculation of wind drift and bullet drop. Sarah spent several minutes observing wind indicators across the valley, noting how vegetation moved at different elevations and distances. The wind pattern was complex with varying speeds and directions at different altitudes. When Sarah fired her fifth shot, the bullet traveled over 1,000 meters through variable wind conditions to strike enemy sniper 4 in his concealed position. The successful elimination at extreme range demonstrated the level of skill that had made Sarah legendary among her fellow soldiers. 3 enemy snipers remained, and their positions were becoming increasingly difficult to identify. The surviving fighters had learned from watching their comrades fall and were using much better concealment and movement techniques. They fired only single shots before immediately relocating, making it nearly impossible to track their exact positions. The engagement had now lasted over 2 hours, and Sarah was beginning to feel the physical and mental strain of sustained combat. Her ammunition supply was still adequate, but every shot had to count as resupply was impossible in her isolated position. The remaining enemy snipers were the most skilled and experienced of the original group, having survived the initial eliminations through superior tactics and positioning. Sarah realized that her hunting strategy needed to change for the final phase of the engagement. The remaining 3 enemy snipers were too skilled to be drawn into making obvious mistakes, and they were beginning to coordinate their movements more effectively as a smaller team. The final 3 enemy snipers had learned from watching their teammates fall one by one. They moved like ghosts across the ridgeline, using every piece of cover and shadow to mask their positions. Sarah knew these were the most dangerous opponents she had ever faced, veterans who understood that survival depended on patience and perfect timing. For 30 minutes, neither side fired a shot. The mountain fell silent except for the wind whistling through the rock formations. Sarah used this time to study the ridge lines systematically, looking for any sign of movement or disturbance that might reveal enemy positions. She knew the remaining snipers were doing the same thing, searching for her location with their scopes. The psychological tension was intense. Each side knew that the next shot fired would likely determine the outcome of the entire engagement. Sarah controlled her breathing and forced herself to remain calm despite the stress of being hunted by 3 skilled killers who knew the terrain better than she did. Enemy Sniper 5 finally made the first move, firing a single shot that struck just inches from Sarah's position. The bullet had come from a completely unexpected direction, nearly 1,200 meters away on a section of ridge that Sarah had dismissed as too distant to be tactically relevant. The enemy sniper had climbed to an extremely elevated position that provided an overview of the entire engagement area. Sarah immediately rolled to a new position as 2 more shots from different directions struck around her previous location. The remaining 3 snipers had coordinated a triangulated attack designed to pin her down and eliminate her through concentrated fire. The tactic was sophisticated and demonstrated the high level of training these enemy fighters possessed. The new enemy positions created a tactical nightmare for Sarah. She was effectively surrounded by 3 snipers positioned at ranges between 800 and 1,200 meters, with each enemy having a clear field of fire to her general location. Any movement would expose her to multiple shooters, while remaining stationary would allow them to close in for easier shots. Sarah made a desperate decision to abandon her current position entirely and relocate to a secondary shooting position she had identified during her initial climb. The move would require exposing herself to enemy fire for approximately 15 seconds while crossing open ground, but staying in her current position guaranteed eventual death. The sprint across exposed terrain was the longest 15 seconds of Sarah's life. Bullets struck the ground around her feet as all 3 remaining enemy snipers opened fire simultaneously. She reached the new position with several near misses that tore through her equipment, but left her uninjured. The new shooting position offered different advantages and challenges. Sarah was now closer to 2 of the enemy snipers, but had lost visual contact with the 3rd sniper who had taken the elevated position. She could hear him moving through the rocks above her, apparently attempting to gain an angle for a direct shot down into her position. Enemy sniper, one of the remaining three, presented himself as a target when he shifted position to maintain visual contact after Sarah's movement. He was approximately 700 meters away, partially concealed behind fallen logs, but with enough of his upper body visible for a precision shot. Sarah took careful aim and fired her sixth successful shot of the engagement. The elimination of a sixth enemy sniper triggered an immediate and violent response from the two survivors. They began using aggressive fire and movement tactics, with one sniper providing covering fire while the other attempted to close distance for a more certain shot. Sarah found herself fighting a mobile battle against opponents who were no longer content to engage from static positions. Enemy Sniper 7, operating from the elevated position, began dropping shots down into Sarah's area from nearly straight above. The angle made it almost impossible for Sarah to return effective fire, while the enemy could shoot down into her position with relative ease. She was forced to abandon the secondary shooting position and move again. Sarah's third position was a narrow crevice between two large boulders that provided excellent protection from above, but limited her field of fire across the ridgeline. She could hear the remaining two enemy snipers communicating with each other through whistled signals as they coordinated their final assault on her position. The sound of boots on rock announced that at least one enemy sniper was approaching her position directly. Sarah prepared her backup pistol and positioned herself to engage in close-quarters combat if necessary. The engagement had evolved from a long-range sniper duel into a deadly game of hide and seek among the rock formations. Enemy Sniper 8 appeared suddenly at the entrance to Sarah's crevice, his rifle raised and ready to fire. Sarah's combat reflexes saved her life as she drew and fired her pistol in one fluid motion, eliminating the seventh enemy sniper at point-blank range before he could get off a shot. The close-quarters elimination left one final enemy sniper somewhere in the rocks above Sarah's position. She could hear him moving carefully through the terrain, apparently trying to locate her exact position without exposing himself to return fire. The final duel would be between two exhausted, highly skilled snipers who had been fighting for over 4 hours. Sarah decided to use the terrain to her advantage one final time. She climbed carefully through the rock formations, using her knowledge of the area gained during the extended engagement to predict where the final enemy sniper might position himself for a shot. The hunt had become personal, with each fighter determined to survive the encounter. The final enemy sniper revealed his position when a small rock fell from his hide, clattering down the mountainside. Sarah traced the sound to its source and identified the sniper's location approximately 400 meters away in a natural cave opening that provided excellent concealment and protection. The final shot of the engagement required Sarah to expose herself briefly to gain a clear line of sight to the cave opening. She counted to 3, then rolled into firing position and acquired the target in her scope just as the enemy sniper was adjusting his own weapon. Both snipers fired simultaneously. Sarah felt the enemy bullet pass close enough to her head to part her hair, while her own shot found its mark with deadly accuracy. The 8th and final enemy sniper collapsed in his cave hide, ending the most challenging engagement of Sarah's military career. The mountain fell completely silent for the first time in hours. Sarah remained in position for several minutes, scanning the ridge line for any sign of additional enemies or movement. When she was certain that all threats had been eliminated, she activated her radio and reported mission success to headquarters. The extraction team found Sarah 6 hours later, still maintaining overwatch of the ridge line from her final shooting position. She had eliminated all 8 enemy snipers without sustaining any injuries, using 8 rounds of ammunition in an engagement that lasted over 6 hours across some of the most challenging terrain imaginable. The enemy sniper team that had terrorized coalition forces for months was completely destroyed. Supply convoys resumed operations the following day, and forward operating bases received their first resupply in over a week. Sarah's solo mission had broken the enemy's control over the strategic mountain pass, and restored freedom of movement for friendly forces throughout the region. The story of the 8 enemy snipers became legendary within military circles, demonstrating what one highly skilled and determined soldier could accomplish under the most adverse conditions. Sarah's achievement represented the pinnacle of sniper craft and battlefield courage, earning her recognition as one of the finest marksmen in military history.